Hello, good afternoon. Thank you everybody to being with us today. We have back today Allison Schaberg talking about governing benefits one-on-one, very important topic, and we always have a lot of questions about it. So thank you, Allison Schaberg, for being with us today. But before we start, I'm going to talk a little bit about Partner Resource Network. My name is Veronica Alvarez, and I'm the Regional 13 Coordinator for PRN. Partner Resource Network is the Parent Training and Information Centers, PTI, for Texas. We are funded by the Department of Education, Office of Special Education, to provide free resources and training for parents of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities that we call them self-advocates. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. We serve parents of children with disability and youth with disabilities from the ages of 0 to 26. Where we serve in all the areas in Texas. We have 20 coordinators across the state, and we have 4 projects now serving parents. We have the PACT project, Team project, PEN, and the new one is called PACT project. We are all part of the Family Partners Resource Network. Myself, I'm in the Team project. I'm in the Austin area in Region 13. So you can see in the map in the red area. So we have Region 13, Region 20, and Region 1, that's Team project. Our services are free, and we offer parent workshops, youth workshops, webinars, information and referrals, one-on-one technical assistance, support in the R meetings and IEP meetings. We do once a year a symposium. We offer parent leadership training and youth leadership trainings. So for today, housekeeping items. So if you have any question, please type it in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we will try to answer all your questions today. If we don't have the chance, we can you can email us, or we can email you guys back with answers. This webinar is being recorded, and we are going to share this webinar in our Facebook page, and also Consolidated Planning Group. Allison Schaberg have a YouTube channel, and she always shares those webinars in her channel, so that she's going to talk about it in a moment about that. So at the end of this presentation, you are going to receive a link. It's a survey or an evaluation. Please help us with that. Fill that evaluation. Give us your feedback. That helps us to report to a grant and continue giving you guys services, free services for everybody. So we do not provide CEUs, but we can do a certificate of attendance. If you need one, please type it in the chat box or email me, and I can make one for you. So again, this is my contact information. I just type it in the chat box, my email, my phone number, and please visit our webpage, www.prntexas.org. We have a lot of information with events, fact sheets, you name it, a lot of very good stuff when you have questions about disability or special care needs. So I'm going to stop my sharing. You cannot do that. Okay. Okay. I can see your screen, Allison. So
okay, perfect.
We have Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group. She has been working in this field of helping families with special healthcare needs, like 25 plus years working with families. And she is a financial planner, and also she is a mom of a 2 special healthcare need child. So she has a lot of experience, and today she's going to be talking about government benefits one-on-one. So welcome.
Thanks, Veronica. As usual, it's always nice to be back with you. And I see a lot of familiar names out there. So again, we can't see you or we can't hear you, but we know you're there. So if you're joining us for the first time, we're definitely glad you're here. If you're coming back, then we're happy about that because we want these webinars to be meaningful and worth your time because we know that none of us have a lot of extra time on our hands with all of the things that we juggle as parents. So as Veronica said, I am the owner of Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs planning firm. We work with families like yourself, professionals as well that work with individuals with disabilities, families that have special needs kids that may or may not, there's always that question mark, need care for the rest of their life. So one of the there's so many ongoing questions that we get all the time, but the government benefits is a big one. SSI and Medicaid, Social Security, kind of distinguishing between all of the terms that are thrown around, it's enough to make anybody insane. So if you feel confused by all of that, and that's why you're here, you are definitely in the right place today. What I would also like to say is that yesterday we had a webinar. There was over 400 people on that webinar yesterday, and we had from the Social Security Administration, Andy Hardwick as our speaker. He has over 40 years with the Social Security Administration. So it was a good webinar, and that is living on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is in the chat box. It is also at the end of this presentation. So as Veronica mentioned, today is being recorded. After the recording today, you guys will get a copy of a PDF of the slides and any other handouts that we said that we're going to mention. Because we had so many people on the webinar yesterday, we weren't able to get to all of the questions, but we were able to download those questions and send those back to Mr. Hardwick, who is answering those questions. And so today, when we send that recording out, if we have those answers to those questions, they were really good questions. We're going to go ahead and attach that today as well. So having said that, what I would say, I always, kind of like to introduce myself, as Veronica mentioned, I have kids. I have 4 kids. I have 2 with disability, one that is transitioning into adulthood right now, one that has already transitioned. And I eat, sleep, and breathe this for a living. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. And I live this both personally and professionally, and it is hard. It is hard. It is unnecessarily difficult, and you are by no means dumb or inept or anything like that. So if you're feeling that way, that's not the case. It is unnecessarily difficult, and that is why we do all of these webinars. Because we want to empower you with the tools and resources that you need to make good decisions, to understand some of these complex things and how they work. So we, put these webinars out there in an effort to empower you. So I am just going to basically skip over this. We kind of already went there. So today, we're talking about government benefits 101. And so a big thing that we are going to be talking about today is SSI and Medicaid, SSDI, or also known as RSDI and Medicare. So I think one of the first things that I want to talk about is oftentimes families are throwing around these terms, SSI and Medicaid, or saying my child gets Social Security, and they're throwing around these terms as they are thinking that they're the same, and they're absolutely not the same. So I like to spend a little bit of time explaining the differences between SSI and SSDI, so that way you could understand what your child may be eligible for or what they may not be eligible for, okay? So SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income, and along with SSI comes Medicaid, okay? So SSI is for the disabled and indigent, okay? So this is basically from a poverty level perspective, a person meets the indigent criteria, and then they also have a disability that is deemed an approved disability through the eyes of the Social Security Administration. Okay, so this is a means-based test. So they're basically looking at the assets that a person has in their name. So what this means is A lot of the families that we serve, their children never ever qualify for SSI due to some of the Medicaid programs. They may qualify for Medicaid, but they don't ever typically qualify for SSI prior to them turning 18. So people say, okay, I have a disabled child and I applied for SSI and I was denied, and I'm really mad about that, right? Because clearly the child is disabled. But the bottom line is when you have a child that is under 18, when it comes to the SSI means-based test, it's based off of your assets, not the child. So if the child is under 18, it's based off of your assets, not the child. So what are they looking for? So basically, if your child is under 18 and you're single, you can have no more than $2,000 assets in your name. If you're a married couple, okay, so a married couple without a disabled child, but one of you is disabled, you can have $3,000 assets in your name. If you have a child, which is again a minor under age 18, and it's a single parent house, you can have 4,000 assets in your name. And so a child with a disability. And if you have a child with two parents, you can have $5,000. In all cases, you can have one house and one car, which is not accountable assets. So you're allowed to have a house, you're allowed to have a car. Now, are you allowed to have a house and 40 acres of land, like a separate deed? No, that would kick you out of that. There are some, let's call it red tape on the one car thing. So if you have a second car that is like valued at $1,500, you could say that car would be sold for a burial expense, and that wouldn't be counted. If the car is over, like say 10 years old, that might not be counted. Or if the car is old and you have a loan on it, then there are some instances where that second car might not be counted. So we're talking about SSI and Medicaid. So if you have a minor child and you have been denied previously and you have assets more than these numbers, it's important to know, because a lot of families don't know. They're just angry that they got denied because your child is clearly disabled. But it is important to know that when your child turns 18, that everything changes. So where the Social Security Administration previously looked at your assets and your buckets of money, when the child turns 18, even though the child still lives in your household, it's going to be based off of their assets, not yours. Okay, so there's like this magic thing as we're transitioning our kids, as our kids are turning 18, whereas they never maybe qualified for anything before, but now they do because it's based off of their assets, not yours. So it's important to note that you can reapply for SSI and Medicaid once they turn 18, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. Okay, so this other term that people throw around, they say, yeah, my child gets Social Security. And while it is true that some kids do get Social Security, a lot of them don't, okay? It is actually possible to get SSI, SSDI, and RSDI at the same time. Now, it has maximum limits, but let's talk about SSDI, also known, so this is synonymous, Social Security, SSDI, which is known as Social Security Disability, and RSDI is Retirement Survivors Disability Income. So those are all synonymous terms, but notice that SSI is not a synonymous term here. So the interesting thing is SSDI is based off of the work record and taxes paid into Social Security. So just by the name itself, Social Security, disability income, we would think that our disabled kids, when we're applying for something, that we're applying for SSDI. Typically, when you apply for SSI for the first time, you apply for SSI and SSDI at the same time, okay? But then typically what happens is you get a denial letter in the mail right away saying that your child has been denied for SSDI. And I get people that are very upset. They call, they can't believe, their child is so clearly disabled, they can't even believe that anybody in their right mind would think that they're not disabled, and how could they possibly be denied? But what they don't tell you when you're going through this process and you apply for SSI and SSDI at the same time, the letter that comes first, I don't know why, is the SSDI denial letter. And the reason your child is being denied for SSDI is because your child in most cases, has not worked. They have not paid into the system. They do not have any work credits. So your child is rightfully being denied for SSDI, but what that letter doesn't tell you is, oh, by the way, your SSI approval letter is coming a few weeks from now, and your child's being approved for SSI. So this causes unnecessary stress and strife for people because nobody understands how this all works. So what we're doing when we're applying this SSDI, in some cases, your child is going to be approved for what they call RSDI under a parent's record. So in this example, if a child was disabled prior to age 22, and then they have the ability to be considered under for childhood disability benefits under a parent's record. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. When your child does become eligible for SSDI, so they will become eligible for SSDI under their own record if they are working, okay, once they earn enough credits. They will become eligible for RSDI under a parent's record if in the event their disability started prior to age 22, and if and when a parent either retires themselves, dies, or goes on Social Security retirement benefits. And so once one of those things happen and your child is eligible, you or your child is eligible for SSDI, they are eligible for Medicare after 2 years. So it is actually possible to be eligible for Medicaid and Medicare at the same time. A lot of families worry that, so they're on SSI first, and they're maybe a parent is getting ready to retire and they're going to switch over to RSDI. And a lot of families worry that when they switch over to RSDI that they're going to lose Medicaid because the income is too high under RSDI. And there is something called the Pickle Amendment, that if you were getting Medicaid before under SSI and you switch over to RSDI, that you will not lose Medicaid for that reason. Okay, Veronica, how are we on questions? Do we have any questions?
Yes, we have some question in the chat, Allison. We have one. It says, I got married this weekend. I don't work, but he does. We have 2 cars, one 2018 and one older truck. My son already received SSI. Will this change? Yes,
it will change. And you probably need to notify the Social Security Administration that you have got married. And so if you have a disabled child and you're married and 2 parents, the maximum assets that you can have is $5,000 in your name. There's going to be income limits, but you do need to notify them. And the thing is sometimes people think, oh, well, if I don't notify them, I'll still keep getting paid. And that may be true, but they do catch up with you, and you will end up in an owing situation where you owe the money back. So I always recommend making that call, letting them know of a material change in circumstance to your household, and they'll walk you through. So is it possible that you could lose those benefits? It is possible, depending on how much your spouse makes, but they'll go over all of that with you. So that is a very good question. And anytime you have any big changes like that, it is important to notify.
Okay, we have another question. Denied SSDI, but then SSI approved even if higher income?
Yes, so you can be denied on the SSDI. Again, most people are denied, most of these kids, when they turn 18, they're denied SSDI because they haven't paid into the system and they do not have enough work credits. And that is normal. Nobody just even tells you about the process, so you feel overwhelmed. And honestly, the funny thing is the letters that come from the Social Security Administration for SSDI, and then the letters that come from SSI, you got to look at the top of the letter very closely, because one will say supplemental security income. The other one is going to say Social Security disability. but they look the same, kind of the same font and everything, coming from the same Social Security Administration, and it's easy to confuse them. And like I said, most people are confused with these terms. So I don't mean to spend too much time on this, but I want people to understand, because these are two very, very different programs. And at different times in your child's life, they may be eligible for one or the other or both. And so I just wanted you to understand that, because there is so much confusion. Okay, additional questions?
I have a 17-year-old who will turn 18 this May. When should I apply to other SSI, and do I have to contact SSI or to do that? The parents?
Okay, that's a great segue into this next slide of when do I apply and what do you need to apply for, okay? So apply for SSI the month that your child turns 18. The appointment should be scheduled a few months in advance. Most of the Social Security offices are really, really backed up right now, okay? They've been closed to the public except for emergencies since the pandemic. Some offices, my understanding is that they're going back in March, and maybe by the end of March, they're going to be working face-to-face again. But so it's not that the workers haven't been working. They've been, a lot of them, working from home and on the phones and online and things like that. So my advice is, about 3 months prior to the child's 18th birthday, call your local office, and always deal with your local office, not the national office. So clearly, you can call the national office if you want to. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to sit on hold for about an hour, and then somebody's going to answer the phone, and they're basically going to tell you to call your local office. Thank you very much. I mean, they're very pleasant, okay, but basically they're going to tell you that. So just call your local office. You can find your local Social Security office by just Googling Social Security office near and put your zip code in, and it'll tell you what your closest one is. But I'm going to tell you a little secret here. You can always go to any Social Security office. However, the one you start with is the one you stay with, okay? So what my suggestion to you is most of the people that I know a lot of families with kids with disabilities, okay? We know people that are like us, right? I would ask around to other family friends that maybe you have that have gone through this before, what office do they deal with? Have they had a good experience or a horrible experience? There are some particular, and I won't name them, there are some particularly horrible Social Security offices in the state of Texas. There are some that we know of that are really, really bad. They don't return calls. They never receive your documents that you send in. They don't call for scheduled appointments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, my advice is, start at an office that you've heard from your friends or people around that is a great office. They return calls. They're great to deal with. That is going to be a less of a source of frustration for you. So, but most of these offices, sometimes when you call these offices, number one, you'll say, I'm calling to schedule an appointment because my child is turning 18 and I need to apply for SSI and Medicaid. And they'll say, I'm sorry, we don't have any appointments, but we'll call you back in a couple of weeks. That actually happened to me, and they actually did call me back in a couple of weeks, which was hard to believe. But anyway, so they actually did call back. Sometimes they'll go ahead and schedule you. Sometimes you can get in that week, but sometimes it's 3 months before you could get in. So again, don't do the appointment. You can do it the month that they turn 18, the calendar month. So if their birthday's in February, you can do it any day of the month in February. It doesn't have to be after their actual birthday, and calling in advance is important. So you're going to apply through your local office. You can do it by phone or online. I'm a fan of the phone appointments. I feel like the things on the phone are getting more things done. I'm sure the Social Security Administration would tell you that they're a fan of the online, of applying online. If you apply online, you're going to get routed to whatever office they route you to. If you apply through the phone, then you're going to call the office that you want to deal with. And so that's another thing. Okay, so what are you doing if you're getting ready to apply for SSI? You want to have evidence that demonstrates that the child's disability began prior to age 22 to qualify for childhood disability benefits, formerly called Disabled Adult Child, or DAC is the acronym that they like to throw around on one parent's record. So that's one thing. So one thing that we're trying to do is establish that our child is eligible for childhood disability benefits under a parent's record. Some of us have kids that will never work. They're never going to pay into the Social Security disability system because they're never going to work, and that is a worker-based system. It's not a needs-based system or a means-based system. It's a worker-based system. So we want our kids to be eligible for that benefit. The other thing that you're going to do is gather medical history. And so for your appointment, I suggest having all of these things ready in your little folder that you've created, names and address of all of the physicians, address, phone number, everybody, the PCP, if they see a neurologist, if they see a cardiologist, if they're seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist, any particular specialty that your child is seeing for any of the diagnoses that they have, and you want to have a list of all of the diagnoses. So maybe autism is the primary diagnosis, but maybe they have other underlying mental health issues as well. Maybe they have a seizure disorder. We always see these comorbid conditions. So remember whatever those diagnoses are, and you want to give them all of them, okay? So diagnosis history, medications. They basically want to know what the medications are and what they're for. They don't seem to care about the dose or the frequency. They just want to know the name of the medication and what they're for. And if the child is working at the time of the application, who do they work for, name, address, and phone number, that kind of thing, okay? Also, what I recommend doing, and a lot of times, like we have as parents, we have My Chart nowadays as far as medical records and things like that for our kids. I recommend sending an email to any of the physicians that you provided their name, address, and phone number and saying, hey, listen, we're getting ready to apply for SSI. They're likely going to reach out and ask for your records, and I would just like to see a copy of what you would be sending upon that request. And I know this sounds like micromanaging, but you can eliminate a lot of mistakes by doing this because sometimes medical records are wrong. It's not clear information in the record, or something is missing, a diagnosis is missing, or a history is missing. And so asking the physicians to do that, I actually did that with my older daughter, and there was a few mistakes in there, which they were legitimate mistakes. And I was able to just email the doctor and say, hey, here's the mistakes I see, and can you make sure this, and this is in there? They corrected it. And so we were approved the first time. So, A, letting the doctor know a heads up that the records are coming, or the request for the records is coming. B, taking a look at that, and then just following up to make sure that the doctor send records, because I've actually seen people be denied for SSI because they requested records from the doctor and the doctor never sent the records. How's that? So it's like you get this denial letter in the mail, and again, you're angry. You're like, okay, this child is clearly disabled and now we've been denied. But you were simply denied because either A, the record was wrong, B, the Social Security Administration requested records from the wrong doctor or something, or again, the request was never received. So the administration kept pestering the doctor was busy, and they never sent the records. So those are all things that could happen for a reason for a denial. So what I want to tell you on a denial, don't be defeated and don't put it on the shelf, and do not ignore a denial. So when you get a letter in the mail saying it's denied, or we need this from you, you have 60 days to appeal, they're for real on that 60 days. It's not a joke. It's a for real 60 days. So read the letter. Sometimes the letters can be overwhelming because there's so many pages. And if anybody's ADD or ADHD, they're like, oh, for the love, I don't even know what I'm reading. And anyway, so they put it aside, and then they don't appeal within the 60 days. A lot of appeals are satisfied on appeal, and the child does get approved. What you can expect is that when you're starting this process, and so I like to set realistic expectations. I'm not a naysayer, but we used to say that you could expect that this process to get approved is going to take about 3 months. With the pandemic, it's been more like 3 to 5 months. So if you had an approval prior to 3 to 5 months, you did good. Okay. So you're lucky. But so don't be discouraged if it's been 2 months, you've heard nothing, or 1 month. Don't be afraid to follow up with them, but it is a time consuming process. So realistic expectations. The other thing that I would like to say is I am a fan of starting a digital log, a Word document, a PDF of every communication that you have, because over the years it becomes a lot. Things change, people retire, people die, people get married, whatever, everything changes. But document, who did you call? What was their extension? Who did you talk to? What are they going to do? What are you going to do? What did you send them? Keep track of all of those things by date, because that will help you in the future if you do have issues in the future. Okay, Veronica, do we have a few questions?
Yes, we have several. Is disabled adult child benefit based on parent retirement totally separate from one of those RSDI or SSDI?
So it would be RSDI. It would be RSDI under that parent's record. So, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So, depending on the amount of what the parent's amount of Social Security or Social Security disability is, if they're on benefits, will depend on how much the child's going to get. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And depending on that number will depend if they switch over directly from SSI to RSDI, or if they have a combination of both SSI and RSDI. It's always going to be up to that total amount. So it's not like you're going to get the full amount of SSI and the full amount of RSDI and you're just going to be rich or something. They're going to limit that. So if you have higher RSDI, you're going to have lower SSI. So we'll talk more about that in a moment.
If a parent has retired but refuses to verify this with the parent with sole custody, who can help verify the disabled child can receive benefits? This one is like a divorce.
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So as far as like childhood disability benefits under a parent's record, if a parent is, if a kid's parents are divorced, basically he can draw benefits under either parent, whether they're married or not. So if they're divorced, whoever retires first or becomes disabled first, that child could receive the RSDI benefits under that parent's record. And then maybe the other parent retires later, but their record is higher. So the kid would end up getting more money. So they could switch over to that parent. So that's one thing. And another thing too is in step parent situations where a person might be remarried and they have either joint custody or full custody of the kid, it is possible that your disabled adult child could draw off of a step parent's record. And there is also possibilities. We do see grandparents that have guardianship or custody of grandkids, that the grandkid would be considered a disabled adult child under a grandparent record as well. It just depends on the situation, because sometimes grandparents have custody of the kid because the parent died. And so then, so I guess what I would tell you, we call those the stump the chump questions. We get them every week. Every week there's always these one-off and these outliers and stuff. And again, we're nationally certified as advisors on that, so we can help you with that. But in an effort not to bore everybody with all the details on those quirky cases, we can help you with that. And there are definitely answers out there for that, and we can help you with that.
Okay, just the last one, and then you can advance a little bit. For the records, we were talking about this. For records, will that include speech and occupational therapy that my son is taking?
Thank you for that. That's a good one.
For that?
So that is good. Any kind of therapies that they're doing, speech or occupational or any of the ABA therapy. Also, if you have a 504 or an IEP in the school, any records of that. Also, if your child is enrolled in vocational rehab, VR, we talk about that on all of our other webinars, but vocational rehab through the Texas Workforce Commission, it's available through age 14 to 22. Any information on any kind of stuff like that is helpful. Okay. And so basically they're going to send you a document, and most people get overwhelmed. Like once you file this application, you get this document, and I forget how many pages it is, but it's one of those documents that you receive and it's like an eye roll instantly. Oh, great. I have to do this now. I thought we already talked about this on the phone. It's just very, very long, but just do it. Just knock it out. If you have questions, you can call us. Everybody feels afraid when they get this document, like afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, and it's going to mess everything up. So if you have questions or you got the document and you feel afraid, you can call us. We can walk you through those. Some of the questions are a little bit odd, and the way that they word them makes people feel a little bit scared. So so for sure, any of the other documentation that you have on things like that are good. Are we okay on questions now?
I mean, we have a lot of questions. You wanna continue and then stop again?
Yeah, yeah. I'll take a couple more questions and then we'll keep going. We're doing okay on time.
Okay. All right. So I asked you about the records. We have, how is the income determined in the future earned income versus not earned income? Modified adjusted gross income, MAGI. Does MAGI determine income for medical approval? Is from
so.
You can see the question in the chat.
So yeah, let me look at that one. I may have to take that one offline. So the earned income and unearned income. So earned income is just that, it's from earnings. Unearned income is such things as SSI, SSDI, RSDI. Those are all unearned income. You know, like sources of like maybe an annuity payment would be considered as unearned income. And so there are a lot of questions on that. And are you speaking of switching over to SSDI and maintaining I'm not sure what you're speaking of. If you're talking about maintaining Medicaid qualification, because one of the concerns is, let me just bring this up. So let's say a child is getting SSI for years and years, and then dad retires and the child is going to switch over to that RSDI, right? So the concern is, again, that the kid's going to lose Medicaid because they're going to make too much money on the RSDI, and that they're going to lose Medicaid. So again, the Pickle Amendment is there, but basically what you have to know is the number is 300% of SSI, so is like 25. I think it's 2513 or 2550 for 2022 is that magic number. So if you're switching over to RSDI, so where it gets complicated and people start getting glazed over and confused is when you're applying for SSI, you definitely want to make sure if your child is working. At the time of the application for SSI, you want to make sure that the child is not earning more than the substantial gainful amount. And the substantial gainful amount for 2022 is $1,350 gross per month. Okay, so $1,350 gross per month is the substantial gainful amount when you're applying for SSI. So last year it was $1,310. Sometimes I hear people say, I heard it's $1,200. Well, that was a lot of years ago. But so it changes every year basically. And so it just changed for 2022. So I'm not sure that answered that question, but I will take another one. And then if I need to address that one off the line, I will.
Sure. That question, it was only for Medicaid qualification as a minor, but okay. So another question, you want another one?
Sure.
This one is a big one. My son received SSI in the lower end, $300. I care for him and unable to work. SSI has child support on file, which we have not received for the past year. I'm now in a situation where I need to work at least part-time. How will that affect my son Medicaid? And if I have to work to keep his Medicaid, is there a number bracket I shouldn't go over?
So one of the things that I like to direct people to is the HHS website. Like you create a username and password for Medicaid, okay? And you can view the various programs. There's like 102 programs for Medicaid out there. So there's MDCP. There's other programs out there where the child may qualify for Medicaid under a various other program that is not based off of your income. It could be based off of the child. So when you create a username and password out there on the Health and Human Services website, Texas, you can put that in the chat box, Veronica, if you could grab that. You can, create your username and password and see what other Medicaid programs that you can come into. The big issue, and again, most of the families that we serve, there are some underlying outliers where kids get Medicaid and stuff like that, but most families, their assets are too much. Like if, again, the numbers are low, $2,000 and $3,000 is what we're talking about. If you have more assets than $2,000 or $3,000, then basically your child's not going to qualify for SSI or Medicaid until they turn 18. So I argue that, you know, so I see people like trying not to work or trying to work off the grid or whatever they're doing to continue to get the SSI and Medicaid, but SSI right now for 2022 is $841 a month, and I would argue that nobody can live off of $841 a month. Okay, so even if they're giving you Medicaid and you're getting $841 a month, most people, no matter what you do, even if you're working part time, you would probably make more than the $841 a month. And if you're working full time, then you may have access to full time group benefits. It's a slippery slope, and it's a difficult pickle that people are in. But again, most of them, you know, are not going to qualify for Medicaid, or if they qualify for Medicaid for a short period of time, then the family does need to go back to work to survive. I mean, financially, so then they lose that. So that is definitely something that's going to happen back and forth if your family happens to qualify prior to the child turning 18. And again, everything changes when the child turns 18. It goes back to their assets, not yours.
Okay, with that answer, you answer another question below that one with your answer, Allison. You already. Okay, so can we follow the presentation, or do you want more questions?
I'm gonna talk about the Blue Book, and then we'll take another question in a minute. So the Social Security Blue Book, and this is something that you can put in your you know, in your Google search, Social Security Blue Book. You can just call it the Social Security Blue Book. This is an impairment guide from the Social Security Administration. And so again, you know, when we were talking about preparing for your application, getting their names, address, and phone numbers of all of your doctors, I would peek at the Social Security Blue Book and look up every impairment your child has. It might be listed under mental health or neurological or whatever, wherever it might be listed in that book. Because when you look up all of those diagnoses, it is going to tell you what the Social Security Administration is looking for to consider that individual disabled. Okay, what is it that you have to prove? You know, what are the deficits that the individual has in order to be considered disabled? And again, I would spend some time looking at this. It is online. And I would look up every single one of your child's diagnoses. Now, there are some things that are considered presumptive disability, where the Social Security Administration is going to consider a person disabled. So one of them, and a lot of times, a lot of families that we work with are dealing with this, is intellectual disability, IDD, IQ below 70. So that is a presumptive disability. Down syndrome is another common one, cerebral palsy. Some of the other ones, total blindness, no light or perception in either eye, or total deafness, amputation of a leg at the hip, bed confinement, stroke more than 3 months in the past. So these are all things that are presumptive. And so, not congratulations, but if your child has one of these things, I guess the congratulations are in order, that it will take less than 3 to 5 months to get this approved. They're going to fast track that basically, and they'll start paying a lot sooner versus later. So those are some of the presumptive things. So from a presumptive disability, if your loved one has one of those, up to 6 months of SSI based off of the disability if the applicant has one of 15 conditions. So they might just go ahead and preliminarily approve and start paying the SSI based off of that. And so they'll make that again at the local office. And so if there's a likelihood that they're going to make that, it's going to be a yes decision. They're basically going to just go ahead and approve that. Okay, so let's talk about this, because this is important, and we've been talking about this. Is where we're going to go deeper on the RSDI, or benefits under a parent's record. Okay, so there are benefits for your loved one that's disability started prior to age 22. If a parent retires, becomes disabled, or passes away. So first things first, what I want to tell you is, if you have a minor child and the parent retires, disabled, becomes disabled or dies, and the child is a minor, regardless if they have disabilities or not, they are entitled to this 50% of the parent's record, okay? But as far as a disabled adult child or the childhood disability benefits, in the example, your child has been approved for SSI, their disability started prior to age 22, a parent retires or goes on disability, that child, your disabled adult child or child eligible for childhood disability benefits, receives 1/2 of the parent's record. So in that example, if dad retires and dad is getting $4,000 a month for his full retirement age benefit of age 67, then that disabled child would be entitled to $2,000 a month. Okay, so now this is like a broad theory, okay? So when I say broad theory, it's a fact, but there are other factors that you have to know about this because there are family maximums. So in an example, a lot of times families with special needs, they maybe have one person that stays home and is a caregiver or a homemaker. So in that example, that caregiver or homemaker may also be drawing off of a spouse's record. So in that example, so if we have one disabled child and a homemaker that would be drawing off of their spouse's record, that $2,000 would basically be split between the disabled child and the spouse. So the disabled child would get $1,000, the spouse would get $1,000, and the worker would get their full benefit of $4,000. So again, there's family maximums. It's usually about 88% of the total, the full benefit amount for the worker is usually the family maximum. So once a person, the child, the disabled adult child or childhood disability qualified individual, they qualify for RSDI or SSDI. After 2 years, they're going to be eligible for Medicare. So at that point, they're going to be dual eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. So this benefit continues as long as your loved one continues to be disabled and as long as the person's record that they're drawing off of remains alive. At the point that the person that they're drawing off of passes away, that benefit is increased to 75% of that parent's record. So 75% in this example of $4,000, as long as, again, the individual remains alive and disabled. Okay, so that's what happens there. So that's why it's so important that we have proof that the child's disability started prior to age 22. So one of the questions that I get sometimes is people say, well, we didn't apply prior to my child being age 22. Can we still do this? Yes, you can. You have to have evidence that the disability started prior to age 22. If you didn't apply when the child turns 18, that's not the end of the world, but we just want to make sure that we have proof that the child should be considered for childhood disability benefits under a parent's record. That is the main thing. Okay, Veronica, how are we on questions?
Yes, we have a lot of questions. In the Q&A, should we apply for legal garnishing for 18 years old before or after applying for SSI?
So that's a great question, and I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. So SSI, sometimes I've heard of offices asking for a copy of your guardianship, and most offices don't, and I always question when they do because they really don't recognize your guardianship. They don't really accept it. They have a representative payee. So a lot of the families that we serve, their kids can't handle money. They can't handle anything. They can't communicate with the Social Security office or whatever. So parents become their representative payee. And so you can explain that when you're filing for the first time that you need to be the representative payee. You don't necessarily have to have guardianship to be a representative payee, and a lot of families don't. And in the state of Texas, not everybody gets guardianship because what the state of Texas wants is the least restrictive option that is appropriate for the child and in the best interest of the child. There's a guardian ad litem involved, and all of those things. So some people may have partial guardianship, some people may have full guardianship, some people may have a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney or supported decision-making agreement. But the bottom line is the Social Security Administration really doesn't care about any of those things because they don't take them, and they want their representative payee designations, and they have their own forms that they require to be signed off on to be able to call on a person's behalf and things like that. So that's a great question. So I would say get the process started. I think the main thing prior to starting the process is making sure that you have money in the right buckets, that the child doesn't have more than $2,000 in their name in all sources. And I'm talking about grandma and grandpa buying them savings bonds or, any other accounts that you may have forgot about because it was 18 years ago that grandpa bought this for them. Making sure that we have money in the right buckets. So what if your child does have more than $2,000 in their name? What do we do? Do we hide the money? The answer is no, you do not hide it. You can't hide it. Okay. So, but what you can do is spend the money down on their benefit. I mean, these kids have needs, their therapy costs, all these out of pocket, all these deductibles, all these things that you're paying that isn't covered, their school, their private school, their therapies, their medications, all of those things. So you can spend down that money. That's one thing you can do. Another thing that you can do is you can move that money into an ABLE account, 529A ABLE account. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And also you can have that money living in a special needs trust. So all of these things that I just mentioned, we have entire presentations about these topics on our YouTube channel. So we're not going to get to all of it. We're going to hit the highlights. But those are places that you can have money that is not going to be accounted against them for the means-based test for SSI. So it's not about hiding it. You can spend it down. Does the kid need a car? Is the kid going to drive? Do they need a computer for their online school? Do they need a new iPhone? And just keep proof of that. Just keep receipts. So if you had $3,000 and you spent it down to where they have less than $2,000, keep proof of what that was for. Okay. So these are just some of the terms that we've been throwing around. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but these are just some of the terms that you might know. And of course, SSI should be on here too, but for the supplemental security income. Okay, Veronica, how are we?
Yeah, more questions. I heard child support is considered income to the child after 18. Did not graduate. If there are more than one child, is the support amount prorated?
So we're getting that. We had that question yesterday, and I'm waiting for Andy to answer that question, and that we should have that out today. But so the child support does need to be directed to a first-party special needs trust because the child support will be counted 2/3 against them as income to the child. So once the child turns 18, often in Texas, child support continues post age 18 if the kids are still in school or if the kid is disabled. Sometimes it's indefinitely, but that will be counted against them. 2/3 of it will be counted against them for SSI purposes. So it is important to have that redirected to a special needs trust. I think it is reasonable. I don't know the answer, or like I said, we are waiting on Andy. If there's multiple kids, that one of the kids that amount is divided equally amongst the kids. I think that is reasonable, and then you're probably going to want to look at the court order for that. But the main thing you got to know is there is no negotiation on this. You do need that directed to a first party special needs trust. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Because otherwise they're basically probably not going to qualify. So that is very important. It's a common mistake. And also another thing is it's a common mistake that people apply for SSI. They don't mention the child support, and 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, the Social Security Administration comes back and says, hey, snap, you've been getting child support. This is income. We have to count this against you. Now you owe us $100,000. So basically letters come like that. So it's real important to disclose what you need to disclose and get things moved. So as far as getting child support redirected to a first party special needs trust, you do need an attorney for that. Or you need a court order is what you need. So if you've got two willing parties and say, hey, I'm not asking for more money. I just want the money that we are getting directed to a special needs trust so little Johnny can qualify for SSI. If we have two willing parties, then it gets signed off on by a judge, and there you have it. You know, that's what you do. I've seen things where it's not that easy because we don't have two willing parties. We have the adversarial party and one willing party. And so that makes it harder. It costs money to fight. Nobody wins. So just keep that in mind. So if you guys can, you know, make that happen. But this isn't a do-it-yourselfer kind of activity. You do need to work with an attorney. You do need a court order for that. This slide, I thought I updated this earlier. This was the 2021 amount. This 1310 is actually 1350. So if you're applying for a Social Security disability, so we're switching gears, Social Security disability, file an application. You got to be found to be medically disabled. You need to be fully insured. You need to have the working quarters. So if you as an adult is filing for disability yourself, you have paid into the system, or you would be considered a disabled adult child. And again, the amount is $1350. This $1310 was for 2021. Okay. So to be entitled for the RSDI, 18 years of age or older, or you're a minor when a parent dies, becomes disabled, or retires. Disability began prior to age 22, is a dependent of the insured worker, is not married, and has not previously performed substantial gainful activity of $13.50 per month gross. And that's again, the amount for 2022. So the Social Security Red Book, we have entire presentations on working and getting SSI or SSDI. There's all kinds of programs. There's Ticket to Work, there's vocational rehab, there's all kinds of different programs. And just because you want to try to work, the Social Security Administration wants to encourage you to try to work. If a person wants to try, maybe they can't work full time, maybe they can work some, maybe they can work a few hours a week. They want to try, and they're not going to strip your benefits away, you know, as soon as you try to work or take everything away. So the Red Book is going to explain the various different programs and different ways that you can have work-related expenses reduced. It's going to talk about working on SSDI and working on SSI. So the Social Security Red Book, it might be hard if you can't sleep at night, there you have it. But it is a good book to read if you do plan for your child to be in vocational rehab, or you do plan for your child to be able to try to work some. One thing that I want you guys to know is that there is an earned income exclusion. Okay, so basically if you're working and getting SSI, there is a deduction, and it's basically, they don't count the first $85 that the person earns. Then they take the earnings and they divide by 2, and then they reduce the SSI amount. That's basically the formula for reducing SSI if they're working. But here's the deal, and a lot of people don't know this. There is something called an earned income exclusion, and you have to ask for this. They're order takers when you call. So if you don't know what you're doing, sometimes you don't get all of the features and benefits that you could be getting through the Social Security Administration. So the earned income exclusion is for kids 18 to 22 that are full-time students. And basically you have to prove that the child is a full-time student. And when you prove that the child's a full-time student, their earnings will not be counted against them or reduce their SSI. So they can actually work, get SSI, and not have their earnings reduced if they're a full-time student. Again, it's only 18 to 22. And the definition of a full-time student isn't what you and I know, that the 12 hours, I think it's 6 or 8 hours for a disabled person as far as a full-time student is concerned. If they're on the college level, some of these kids might be in an 18 plus program. That's okay too, 18 to 22 full-time students. So keep that in mind, earned income exclusion. Okay, I know that we are running out of time. Let me see kind of where we are. So I'm going to kind of run through this. As far as protecting your kids and their assets and being eligible for these benefits, we want to make sure that they have money in the right buckets. We want to make sure that your special needs child is not set up as a beneficiary on any life insurance, investment, or bank accounts directly. We also want to ensure that well-meaning family members don't leave assets directly to the named individual. So the right way to leave money to your special needs child is through a third-party special needs trust. Okay, so that is the right way. And there's no such thing as leaving money to an ABLE account. We get that question all the time. So when we're talking about the money in the right buckets, we've kind of already talked about this a little bit. We've got the special needs trust. We've got how do we fund these trusts? A lot of times these trusts are funded with life insurance. And then, of course, we have the ABLE account. Again, we have presentations on all of these. What you need to know about an ABLE account is the beneficiary is the account owner, and income earned in the account is not taxable, but it does not jeopardize SSI, Medicaid, or any other public benefits. Bottom line on what you need to know about this is you can contribute $16,000 a year and up to an additional $12,880 if the child is working. So there's no taxes on the gains or anything. And basically what you can do is you can pay for expenses if it's construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability. You can pay for this out of an ABLE account. So these are good, and these are something that you may want to look into. We can help you with that. So basically, the reason you need an ABLE account and a special needs trust, we kind of get that question all the time. You can pay for housing and rent and mortgage payments out of an ABLE account. You can pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account. And if you're getting SSI and Medicaid, you're not necessarily supposed to pay for food and shelter out of the special needs trust. So this is a list of what they can pay for. And over here is a list of what some of the special needs trusts can pay for. A special needs trust can buy a house outright, but it can't pay that monthly debt service. So those are kind of that in a nutshell. So what we can do, we can help you develop a future care plan for your family. A lot of families want to know, how do I look at what the future care costs are going to be for my loved one? So we can help you identify that. As National Social Security advisors, we do have specialized software that will help us plug in all of your information of how and when you should pull the trigger on your Social Security to be able to maximize those benefits for you, your spouse, and your child. So, and this is especially true when we have one family member that is a caretaker, or if we have a household that has more than one special needs child that will be drawing off of a parent's record. So we're out of time for today. These are all things that we've kind of talked about that, we've kind of danced around or hit on. And again, all of these things should be on your special needs planning radar. We do have webinars on every single one of these topics, so we can go deeper with you. And of course, we're happy to talk with you offline. You can reach out to us directly and schedule a free consultation. This is my team. I work on a collaborative team. So whether you get any one of us, we are all adept in all of these matters. So I always just like to share my team with you. But you guys can take a picture of this QR code. You can schedule, this will take you to a calendar where you can schedule an appointment. So if you have some additional one-off questions that you didn't get answers to, or you want to go deeper about your unique situation or kind of where you've been on this planning trail as far as government benefits, we are definitely happy to help. And so, Veronica, I anticipate we have a lot more questions out there. Guys, feel free to email me these questions that you have, because I am happy to engage with you on that. I know that this is hard and it's a lot to take in. So thanks for sticking with us today. It's a lot of information, but we really tried to pack this in so you can have the information that you need, that you can feel empowered, that you've got this, that you can take this. Now, you can pay us. We can help you apply for SSI, but we would rather explain to you the process and show you that you can do it. And then if you have an issue and you need to appeal and you need help, then you can engage that way. You do not have to hire an attorney to apply for SSI, and you do not have to hire us to apply for SSI. You can do this yourself. So definitely feel encouraged that way. Thank you, Veronica, for having us, and we look forward to being with you again.
Thank you. Lovely to have you again with all this great information for our parents and our audience. Sorry for the question that we didn't have the chance to address, but later on, like Allison said, you can reach out to her or to me, and we can help you with finding that answer for you guys. So thank you again, and we are going to stop the recording now.